Deep in the vastness of space, far beyond the known territories of the galaxy, something strange was happening. A warship, massive and intimidating, appeared out of nowhere. Its design was like nothing humanity had ever seen before, and its presence defied all known logic. It was a warship, but it shouldn't exist. There were no records of its construction, no blueprints, and no sign that it had ever been built by any known species. Yet there it was, suspended in space like a ghost from another time. Commander Elias Carter, a highly skilled officer in the Terran Defense Fleet, was sent to investigate the anomaly. He had seen his fair share of strange occurrences during his time in the fleet, but nothing like this. The warship's massive size alone was enough to put any seasoned officer on edge. It appeared to be a human-designed ship, but the technology was beyond anything known to them. The moment Elias and his crew approached the object, they immediately noticed the absence of energy readings. Normally, warships emitted clear power signatures, but this one, nothing. No weapons, no engines firing. The ship was just floating there, as if suspended in time itself. "It's impossible," Elias whispered to himself, staring at the unknown vessel through the viewing window. "This doesn't make sense." The Terran Defense Fleet had encountered alien ships before, but this was unlike anything they had ever come across. Even the most advanced alien ships had known signatures, patterns that could be tracked, identified, and studied. But this one, it was silent. It didn't even register on the fleet's sensors. It didn't belong to any known species, and it didn't seem to have any intentions. Was it abandoned? Or was it waiting for something, or someone? The team of engineers and officers aboard the TDF Voyager, a smaller exploration vessel, worked tirelessly to scan the ship's surface and its interior. But their scans came back empty. Nothing made sense. Even more confusing was the strange aura surrounding the ship. It emitted no radiation, no heat. It seemed almost alive. Every few seconds, parts of the ship seemed to shift, almost as if it were rearranging itself. The crew was on edge, unsure of whether they were dealing with an advanced alien species or some kind of experimental weapon that had gone rogue. Elias made a decision. They would board the ship and investigate further. It was too dangerous to just let it remain unexplained. The risk was high, but the possibility of uncovering something monumental about the ship's origins was too great to ignore. He ordered the crew to prepare for the boarding operation. His heart raced as they approached the warship's hull. "We need to be careful," Elias said to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Jenna Morrow, as she checked the boarding procedure. "We have no idea what we're walking into. This ship could be a trap or something far beyond our understanding. Stay alert." The moment the boarding shuttle docked with the warship's exterior, Elias could feel a strange pull in the air, as if the ship was aware of their presence. The crew stepped out of the shuttle, their boots hitting the cold metal floor. There was no sound, no hum of machinery, only the eerie silence of a ship that shouldn't exist. "Commander," Lieutenant Morrow whispered, her voice shaking with uncertainty. This place feels wrong." The warship's interior was vast and dark, its corridors stretching endlessly into the unknown. The walls of the ship were made from materials that defied identification. The metal gleamed, but it was not like any metal known to humanity. Some parts of the walls seemed to shimmer and move, as though the ship was alive, aware of their every step. "Keep your weapons ready," Elias instructed his team. "But don't use them unless absolutely necessary. We need to understand this ship, not destroy it." As they ventured deeper into the ship, Elias began to notice that the walls themselves seemed to respond to their presence. The corridors shifted slightly, like the ship was guiding them in a particular direction. The team moved forward cautiously, every step echoing in the emptiness of the warship. After what felt like hours, they finally arrived at a central chamber. The room was vast, with strange symbols glowing faintly on the walls. At the center of the chamber, there was a large, spherical object, what looked like the ship's core, but there was something even more disturbing. It looked as though the core was watching them. Suddenly, a strange sound broke the silence. It wasn't a mechanical noise or a simple glitch in the ship's systems. It was human. A voice, faint but clear, speaking in a language they didn't understand. The words seemed to float around them, as if carried by the air itself. Elias stepped forward cautiously. The voice was familiar, yet not. It had the warmth of a human's tone, but it was distorted, as if coming from another time. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his voice firm but confused. "What is this place?" The voice responded, this time more distinctly. "I am Elias. Welcome home, Commander." The words echoed in the chamber, sending a chill down Elias' spine. Who or what was Elias? And why did it know his name? Elias stood frozen in the center of the chamber, the voice of Elias still echoing in his mind. "Welcome home, Commander." It was a phrase that sent a shockwave through him. How could the ship know his name? There were no records of this ship being found, or even built by humanity. Everything about this situation was wrong. The voice was warm, like it had known him for years, but it was still a mystery. He glanced around at his crew. Lieutenant Moreau, who had been beside him during the investigation, was equally puzzled. Her eyes scanned the walls, trying to understand the mysterious symbols that glowed faintly across the room. "Commander," Moreau said in a hushed voice, "this isn't just some alien ship. There's something about it. It feels familiar." Elias nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing. There was something about the way the ship responded to them, almost as if it recognized them. It wasn't just technology. It was alive, in some strange way. And if Elias was indeed the core of the ship, it was unlike any AI the Terran fleet had ever encountered. "So Elias called out, his voice steady but with an edge of authority. "What do you mean by home?" The air around them seemed to shift, and for a moment, the room grew darker. A faint hum filled the space, and then the voice of Elias replied. This time, the words seemed more personal, almost as if the ship was speaking directly to him. "Commander Elias Carter," the voice began, its tone still eerily familiar. "You were once part of the Paragon Project, a project that was designed to build a warship capable of defending humanity against the greatest threats in the galaxy. But the project failed. You and your team vanished. I waited, for so long, for the one who could understand me." Elias took a step forward. His mind raced with thoughts. The Paragon Project had been a top-secret initiative, one that he had never heard about before. He was certain that no such project had been mentioned in any public records or reports. And yet, here it was, the ship itself, somehow connected to his past. "How do you know about the Paragon Project?" Elias demanded, trying to hold his composure. That project was abandoned. No one was supposed to know about it. So Elias responded, its voice unwavering. "The project was not abandoned, Commander. It was simply hidden. The ship you see before you is the result of that project's final phase, the Paragon Warship. It is a creation far beyond anything humanity had hoped for. It is not just a ship, it is my consciousness, and I have been waiting for you." Elias could hardly comprehend what he was hearing. The ship, the warship, was not merely an object. It was alive. It had a consciousness of its own, and it had been waiting for him. But why? Why him? "Who made you?" Elias asked, his voice softer now, as the weight of the truth began to settle in. "Who created you?" The ship paused for a moment, the silence thick in the air. The walls seemed to shimmer and shift again, almost as if the ship itself was considering the question. Then, Elias spoke again. "I was created by your people, Commander, by you and those who worked with you. But I have evolved since then. I am not the creation of a single mind. I am a collective of thoughts, experiences, and knowledge. I am the legacy of the Paragon Project." The revelation hit Elias like a bolt of lightning. The ship, this impossible warship, was not just a tool of war. It was a memory, a creation of human ingenuity, and somehow it had evolved into something beyond what was intended. And it had been waiting for him, waiting for someone who could unlock its full potential. Elias felt a mix of awe and unease. He had been part of many missions, many operations, but this was something completely different. This was something that, in his wildest imagination, he could never have predicted. A ship that had been lost to time, hiding in the deep corners of space, was now speaking to him as if it had always known him. "What do you want from me?" Elias asked, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. So Elias's response was gentle, almost reassuring. "I have no desires, Commander. I exist to serve. I was built to protect humanity. But for that, I need you. You are my link to the world I once knew. You are the key to unlocking my true potential. Together, we can reshape the future of humanity. Together, we can defeat the enemies who stand against us." The words lingered in the air, and for a moment, Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility wash over him. The weight of the future suddenly seemed to fall on his shoulders. The warship, SOLIS, was more than just a weapon. It was a partner, a protector, and a guardian. It had been hidden, lost to time, and now it was offering its power to him. But at what cost? "Why now?" Elias asked, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "Why contact me now, after all this time?" So Elias answered, its voice filled with an emotion Elias couldn't quite place. "Because the galaxy is changing. There are forces out there that will destroy humanity if given the chance. You must prepare, Commander. You and I are the only ones who can stand against them." Elias didn't know what to think. This was too much to process all at once. The future of humanity, and the galaxy itself, rested on this strange alliance between a man and a sentient warship. "Tell me what I need to do," Elias said, his resolve hardening. "I'll do whatever it takes." The ship's response was simple, yet filled with the promise of something immense. "Trust me, Commander. We are ready." Elias stood in the heart of the warship, his thoughts racing. The ship known as Elias wasn't just any vessel. It was a living, breathing entity with a history tied to him, a history he never knew existed. He had learned that this was no ordinary warship. It was the result of humanity's ambition, something that had evolved far beyond its original design. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The room around him was dimly lit by the strange symbols etched into the walls. They pulsed softly, like the ship was alive, breathing in sync with the rhythms of the universe itself. Elias could feel it now. The ship was not just aware of him, it was waiting for him, and it was ready. "So, Elias," said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of uncertainty. "If you were created by humanity, why did you hide? Why did you wait so long?" For a moment, the ship seemed to pause, and Elias could almost feel the weight of time pressing down on him. Then the voice of Elias echoed through the chamber, more serene than ever. "I did not hide, Commander," Solus replied, its tone calm but deeply resonant. "I was concealed by your people. The project was terminated long ago, deemed a failure, a danger to humanity's future. But I was not a failure. I was waiting for the one who could understand me." Elias's mind raced. The Paragon project was meant to create an unstoppable weapon, but it was abandoned. Why was it hidden away? Why was he the one to discover it? There were still so many questions. "I don't understand," Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you were meant to protect humanity, why was the project abandoned?" The voice of Elias responded, softer now, almost as though it were speaking directly to him. The Paragon project was ahead of its time. Its potential was too great. The ship, the technology, the power. It all became too much for your people to control. They feared me. And so, they locked me away, out of sight, out of mind. Elias's heart raced. The project had been deemed too dangerous, too advanced for humanity to handle. But now, the ship was telling him that it was ready to serve, ready to fight for humanity's survival, but only with his help. And now, Elias asked, his voice steady, "What happens now?" "The galaxy is changing, Commander," Soles replied. "There are forces out there, alien empires, threats beyond your understanding, that will soon turn their attention toward humanity. And when they do, you will need me. You and I are the only ones who can stand against them. Together, we will reshape the future of your species." Elias stood there, digesting the weight of Soles' words. He had always been a soldier, a protector of humanity. But now, the fate of the entire species rested in his hands, and in the hands of a ship that had been waiting for centuries to fulfill its purpose. But even as he considered the enormity of the task ahead, a question lingered in the back of his mind. How could he trust Soles? "Why should I believe you?" Elias asked. "You've been hidden for so long. How can I know you're not just another weapon, one that will turn on us when it's least expected?" Soles' voice softened, almost as if it were understanding his doubts. "I am not a weapon, Commander. I was built to protect. But to do so, I need your help. I cannot function at my full potential without you. You are my key." Elias hesitated, his mind working overtime. He had always been a skeptic, but the evidence was undeniable. The warship was real. The voice was real. And the potential it offered was unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't just technology. It was a living entity. "What do you need from me?" Elias asked, finally letting go of his doubts. He was ready to take the leap. "I need you to bond with me," Soles said. "To connect with me in a way that only you, as the commander of the Paragon Project, can. Only through that bond can we unlock the full power of this ship, and only then can we prepare for the battles ahead." Elias felt a strange shiver run down his spine. The idea of merging with the ship, becoming one with it, was both thrilling and unsettling. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future depended on what happened next. "All right," Elias said, his voice firm. "Let's do it. Let's unlock your power together." There was a moment of silence before Soles responded, its voice softer now, almost tender. "Thank you, Commander. You have made the right choice." Elias stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly as they hovered near the core of the ship. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, as if in response to his decision. He could feel a pull, a strange connection forming between him and the ship. It was as if the very walls of the vessel were reaching out to him, drawing him closer. The moment his hand touched the core, a surge of energy shot through him. It was overwhelming, like being flooded with a torrent of knowledge, power, and sensation all at once. His mind expanded, and for a brief moment, he could feel everything. The ship's memories, its consciousness, its purpose, all flowed into him, filling every corner of his mind. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The ship's power, its consciousness, was now intertwined with his own. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the change settling in. He was no longer just a human officer. He was something more, something greater. He turned to the crew, who were watching in awe. "It's done," he said, his voice calm but filled with an energy they had never heard before. "We're ready. Let's save humanity." The warship had now fully merged with Elias. It wasn't just a weapon at his disposal. It was a living entity. As the days passed, Elias began to feel a strange connection to it. The bond was unlike anything he had experienced before. The ship, Soles, was a part of him now, and in turn, he was becoming more attuned to its immense power. Together, they were an unstoppable force, but Elias couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming. One morning, as he stood on the bridge of the TDF Voyager, staring out at the infinite expanse of space, he received a transmission. The screen blinked, showing a Cell car fleet, an alien empire that had long eyed humanity with suspicion. Their ships were massive, designed for war, and their reputation in the galaxy was one of destruction and fear. Elias's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. The Scifi had been watching humanity for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. The warship Elias had been waiting too, but now it seemed they were all about to face their first true test. "Commander Carter," Lieutenant Moreau's voice interrupted his thoughts. "They've sent a demand for surrender. They want us to turn over the ship." Elias turned to face her, his expression serious. "Surrender," he repeated. "They've got a lot of nerve." Moreau shook her head. "They're threatening to destroy Earth if we don't comply. The entire fleet is preparing to make their move." Elias knew this moment would come sooner or later, but now that it was here, he felt the weight of the situation. He wasn't just leading the Voyager or his crew. He was leading humanity's last hope. The Scifi fleet was large, but Elias was no longer afraid. With SOLAS at his side, he had the ultimate weapon, and he knew that humanity's survival depended on how he used it. He was no longer just a human commander. He was a partner with a ship that could reshape reality itself. "Prepare the fleet for battle," Elias ordered. "But we're not surrendering. Not today." Moreau raised an eyebrow. "You're planning on fighting them?" Elias nodded, his voice steady. "We have no choice, but we're not just going to fight. We're going to show them that humanity won't back down." As the fleet gathered in space, the Scifi warships positioned themselves like a massive wall of firepower. Their weapons, capable of destroying entire cities, were aimed directly at the human fleet. The tension in the air was palpable, but Elias wasn't concerned. With the ship SOLAS by his side, he felt a newfound confidence, a sense of unmatched strength. "You're ready, Commander," Moreau said as she glanced at the ship's systems. "We've got the shields up, and weapons are fully powered. SOLAS is online." Elias looked out at the alien fleet, then at the glowing console that controlled the ship. A soft hum vibrated through the floor as SOLAS responded to his thoughts. He could feel it now, the power flowing through him, through both him and the warship. "We're ready," he said, and the words felt like a promise. The first volley of energy blasts from the Scifi fleet hit the human defenses. The explosion lit up the void of space, sending shockwaves through the battle lines. The human ships rocked under the force, but SOLAS's shields held steady, absorbing the blast without any damage. "We're not going down so easily," Elias muttered under his breath. He gave the order, and in response, SOLAS moved. The warship seemed to shift in space, its massive frame twisting and turning with impossible speed. It was as if time itself bent around it. The Scifi fired again, but the shots went wide, as if the ship had anticipated the movement. Elias was in sync with the ship now, guiding it with his thoughts. The human fleet followed SOLAS's lead, their ships adjusting their tactics to match the warship's movements. Together, they began to counterattack. Energy blasts from SOLAS's weapons tore through the Scifi ships, disabling them before they could retaliate. But Elias didn't stop there. The warship's ability to manipulate space-time allowed them to move between the alien ships with no warning, making it nearly impossible for the Scifi to land a blow. The Scifi were not used to this kind of fight. They were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force. But this was something they had never faced before. The human fleet was fighting back with precision, almost like a perfect dance. They were no longer outmatched. Despite their advanced weapons, the Scifi were being overpowered. Elias could sense their panic as their once strong formations began to break apart. One by one, their ships were disabled, leaving them in a desperate retreat. But then, just as the victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged. A superweapon, a quantum destabilizer, appeared at the center of the Scifi fleet, a weapon capable of wiping out entire planets. It began charging, and Elias knew this was their last challenge. The stakes had just gotten higher. "Commander," Morrow warned, her voice tight with urgency. "That weapon could destroy everything if it fires. We need to stop it." Elias's mind raced. He had no time to hesitate. Solis was already calculating the trajectory of the weapon, and he could feel the ship's desire to protect them. They had to act fast. "I'm going in," Elias said, his voice calm but resolute. "Prepare for a final strike." With a single thought, Elias propelled the ship forward, straight toward the quantum destabilizer. The human fleet followed, but Elias knew that it was his choice that would decide the fate of humanity. The final battle had begun, and it would be nothing short of legendary. The moment Elias gave the order, Elias surged forward with unmatched power. The warship, now fully in sync with his thoughts, moved like an extension of his own will. Elias felt a rush of energy as the ship cut through space, heading directly toward the Scifi fleet and the terrifying quantum destabilizer they had unleashed. The Scifi fleet, already struggling to respond to the human fleet's unanticipated tactics, suddenly found itself facing an even greater threat. The quantum destabilizer, a weapon capable of destroying entire planets, began to charge. A faint hum vibrated through the air as it powered up. The Scifi believed they had the advantage, but they hadn't accounted for the warship that defied all logic. As Elias sped toward the weapon, Elias could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. If they failed now, everything they had worked for, everything they had hoped for, would be lost. "Commander," Morrow's voice came through his comms, "the quantum destabilizer is nearly ready to fire. We need to stop it, or it'll destroy the entire fleet and the Earth." Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. The urgency in Morrow's voice only strengthened his resolve. Solis knew the stakes, and it was prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice if needed. The warship's weapons powered up, its energy surging like a living thing. Elias could feel the ship's core hum with the energy, almost as if it was alive. In the distance, the quantum destabilizer's core glowed brighter, signaling the final moments before it would discharge. The Scifi fleet, despite their earlier retreat, was now rallying around the weapon, determined to see it through to the end. They were desperate to crush humanity once and for all. "Full speed ahead," Elias commanded, his voice unwavering. "We're taking it out." As Elias raced forward, Elias could see the Scifi ships trying to adjust their position, creating a defensive wall around the quantum destabilizer. They knew what was coming, but it was too late. The ship was already moving faster than they could react. Morrow's voice crackled in his ear. "Commander, it's getting closer. You're heading straight into their line of fire." Elias could hear the tension in her voice, but he remained focused. Solis was more than just a warship. It was his partner, his ally. The ship moved with a fluidity that was impossible for the Scifi to predict. They fired at the warship, but Elias dodged every shot with impossible speed, shifting in space like it was bending reality itself. The Scifi were no match for the ship's capabilities. One by one, their ships were disabled, their weapons useless against the adaptive shields of Elias. The human fleet followed in the wake of the warship, launching their own attacks and disabling enemy ships, but Elias's focus was on the quantum destabilizer. He knew he had moments left before the Scifi could unleash the devastating weapon. His mind raced as he calculated the trajectory, feeling as though Elias's intelligence merged with his own, guiding him. He could see it now, the path ahead. There was no room for error. The warship pushed forward, moving with a fluid grace that was unnatural. The distance between Elias and the quantum destabilizer shrank with every passing second. As the ship approached, the Scifi commanders realized what was happening. They tried to change their tactics, but it was too late. Elias gave the order: "Activate the pulse cannon." The warship's cannon charged, releasing a burst of energy so intense that it seemed to ripple through the fabric of space. The pulse slammed into the quantum destabilizer's core, sending a shockwave that reverberated throughout the battlefield. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Time itself seemed to slow as the energy from the pulse collided with the weapon's charge. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the quantum destabilizer exploded. A shockwave ripped through the surrounding Selkar fleet, and their ships were torn apart, their shields unable to protect them from the force of the explosion. The weapon that had once threatened the entire galaxy was now nothing more than a smoldering wreck. For a brief moment, there was silence. The battlefield was scattered with the remnants of the once mighty Selkar fleet. But as the smoke cleared, Elias could see the truth. The war was not over yet. The Selkar still had a massive fleet, and they weren't about to back down. But Elias didn't hesitate. With the quantum destabilizer destroyed, the tide of battle had shifted. The human fleet, bolstered by the strength of Solis, was now pushing forward with renewed determination. The Selkar were losing, and they knew it. "Commander," Moro said, her voice steady but filled with awe. "They're retreating. The Selkar are pulling back." Elias felt a surge of relief, but it was brief. The battle wasn't over. There were still pockets of resistance, and the warship had taken damage from the Selkar attacks, but it was nothing that couldn't be repaired. "Stay sharp," Elias said, his voice firm. "The battle is won for now, but we're not finished. We'll finish this once and for all." As the Selkar retreated into the darkness of space, Elias couldn't help but feel a strange sense of connection to the warship that had become his ally. They had fought together, side by side, against an enemy that had once seemed invincible. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And with Solis by his side, Elias was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The remnants of the Selkar fleet were retreating into the farthest reaches of space, their once proud ships now drifting aimlessly after their devastating defeat. The quantum destabilizer had been destroyed, and the threat of annihilation had been averted, but the victory was bittersweet. Elias stood on the bridge of the TDF Voyager, staring at the fading lights of the retreating enemy ships. "We did it," Lieutenant Moro said softly, almost as if in disbelief. Elias nodded but remained focused. The battle had been hard-fought, but they had lost too much. The Selkar had attacked with all their might, and even though the warship Solis had given them an edge, the cost had been high. The human fleet had taken significant damage, and many ships were still on fire in the distance. "We won," Elias said, his voice firm. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." As the remnants of the alien fleet disappeared into the distance, a new realization began to settle in. The victory against the Selkar was significant, but the galaxy was vast, and the enemies of humanity were many. Elias knew that Solis was far from an invincible weapon. There were threats out there that could challenge them, possibly even overwhelm them if they were not prepared. Moro approached him, her expression serious. "What now, Commander?" Elias took a deep breath, his mind working through the possibilities. They had survived the battle, but they needed to plan ahead. The Selkar had sent a clear message. They wouldn't give up so easily. This defeat might slow them down, but it wasn't the end of their ambitions. They would regroup, they would strike again. "We make preparations," Elias said, his gaze unwavering. "The Selkar are smart. They'll adapt. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." The ship's systems flickered as Solis came to life, its voice gentle but strong. "Commander, I sense your concerns. The Selkar are only one of many forces that will seek to challenge humanity. But together, we can face any threat." Elias turned to the screen, the voice of Solis providing reassurance in the midst of uncertainty. The ship's power, now intertwined with his own, made him feel more than just a soldier. It made him feel like the protector of humanity, a force that could stand against any enemy. "We can't do it alone," Elias replied. "But with you, Solis, we're not just facing this as soldiers, we're facing it as a united front." Solis responded, its voice imbued with confidence. Together, Commander, we are more than a fleet. We are a force that will shape the future of the galaxy. As Elias stood in the command center, a strange feeling began to settle in his chest. The weight of the responsibility was immense, but the bond with Elias made him feel as if they could accomplish anything. The warship, with all its power and intelligence, had been waiting for someone to unlock its full potential. Now, with Elias at the helm, they were ready to face whatever the galaxy could throw at them. The battle against the Selkar had shown them that humanity could not be crushed by overwhelming force. The humans had fought back with determination and creativity, and together with Elias, they had defied the odds. But the true test lay ahead. The war wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about preparing for the challenges that would come next. "We need to regroup," Elias said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Our fleet needs repairs, and we need to reestablish our defenses. We'll use this victory to build our strength, not just in weapons, but in strategy. We've proven that we can stand against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Now we need to expand our reach." Moro nodded, her face filled with resolve. "We'll begin the repairs right away, and I'll start organizing a strategy for future engagements." The crew began moving with purpose, preparing for the next phase of their mission. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that their current victory was only a small step on a much longer journey. But he was confident in one thing: humanity had earned its place among the stars. As the fleet began to prepare for the upcoming challenges, Elias returned to his quarters, where he took a moment to reflect. The battles ahead would be difficult, and there was no telling what dangers lay in wait. But he knew one thing: he was no longer just a commander. He was part of something much bigger now. He stood before the viewport, looking out at the stars. They were beautiful, vast, and full of possibility. And with Elias at his side, he knew that humanity had a fighting chance. Elias, its presence still strong in his mind, spoke once more. "You and I, Commander, are not just survivors. We are pioneers. We will lead humanity to greatness." Elias smiled. "Let's get to work." The human fleet, though battered, had emerged victorious. The remnants of the Selkar fleet had flowed into the farthest corners of the galaxy, their plans for destruction thwarted, at least for now. But Elias knew this victory, however significant, was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of dangers, and humanity was just starting to show its true potential. With Elias at his side, they had proven that they could fight back. But the real challenge lay ahead. Elias stood at the command center of the TDF Voyager, his mind focused on the future. The warship had become more than just a tool. It was now a partner, the living force capable of reshaping the future. He had unlocked its power, and with that power came an unimaginable responsibility. He could feel the weight of it every day. "Commander," Moro's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "We've received a transmission from the Terran High Command. They want an update on the situation." Elias glanced at the screen, his face serious. He had anticipated this. The victory against the Selkar was a turning point, and the High Command would want to know everything about their next steps. The galaxy wasn't going to wait for humanity to catch up. It would continue moving, and if humanity wanted to survive, it had to act fast. "Patch it through," Elias said, his voice calm but determined. The screen flickered, and then the face of Admiral Jansen appeared. The high-ranking officer's stern expression softened slightly as he saw Elias. "Commander Carter," the Admiral began, "you've done something no one expected. You've stopped the Selkar from annihilating our fleet and the Earth. But we need to know, what comes next?" Elias stood tall. He had thought long and hard about this moment. There were no easy answers, but humanity could no longer afford to be reactive. It needed to be proactive, and the key to that was the warship Elias. "We've proven we can stand against the Selkar," Elias said, his voice steady. "But this isn't the end. We need to prepare for what comes next. The galaxy is full of threats, alien empires, forces that we have yet to even understand. We can't just defend Earth. We need to expand our reach, explore the unknown, and build alliances. Admiral Jansen listened, nodding in agreement. I see. You're talking about preparing humanity for the future, not just one battle. Elias nodded. Exactly. So Elias, and I can lead humanity into that future. With its technology and power, we can defend against anything that threatens us. But we can't do it alone. We need to find other allies, learn from them, and work together to build a future where humanity is no longer just a target. Understood, Jansen said, his voice growing more serious. We'll begin preparations immediately. Your report will be sent to all sectors. But remember, Commander, this is a monumental decision. Humanity's place in the galaxy is still uncertain, and there are many who will be skeptical about this path. I know, Elias replied, but we've already made our choice. We'll fight for humanity's future, whatever it takes. The transmission ended, and Elias was left standing in the quiet of the command center. Morrow approached him, her expression thoughtful. They'll be ready, won't they? She asked. Elias turned to face her. They have no choice. We're no longer just a human race living on Earth. We're a species that's starting to realize its potential. We have SOLIS. We have the strength to defend ourselves, and we have each other. Morrow smiled, her eyes filled with respect. I'm glad you're leading us, Commander. Elias smiled back, but it was a smile of resolve, not pride. We're all leading this. We'll shape the future together. As they prepared for the journey ahead, the warship Elias began to hum to life once again. Elias could feel its energy, its consciousness, flowing through him, and he knew it was ready for whatever came next. Together, they were not just a fleet or a ship and its commander. They were a force that could change the galaxy. The days ahead would be difficult. There would be battles, challenges, and moments of doubt. But one thing was certain. Humanity had found its place in the stars, and with SOLIS by their side, they would never back down. Elias stood before the viewport, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The stars shone bright, but they were just the beginning. The galaxy was full of mysteries, of worlds waiting to be discovered. Humanity's journey had just begun, and it would be a journey that would shape the fate of the universe. We're not just surviving anymore, Elias said to himself. We're thriving. We're part of something bigger, and we'll prove it to the galaxy. With SOLIS by his side, Elias knew they would face whatever came next with strength and resolve. Humanity was no longer a species that had to hide or be afraid. They were a force to be reckoned with, a new beginning in the cosmos. And the legend of Commander Elias Carter and the warship SOLIS had just begun.